In this video, I'm going to talk about making different shape cuts on different pieces of materials, flat plates, a piece of rectangle tubing, a piece of round tubing, so you can see how those go together. So first of all, we're going to start a sketch like usual. And so when we go into the Create toolbar, you'll see there's a few different options. So yes, we can draw our lines, we can draw rectangles, but if we look down, we can also see slots. And so a lot of times if we're making attachment plates, we'll want to have a slot so you can have some adjustment. So this would be a good one for that. So one that's good here, the center to center slot. I'll pick a point, kind of drag it out, click, and then just drag it out and click. And it puts it in. And now I can dimension what I want. So if I just dimension this arc, you can see it's going to give me the radius by default. If I right click, you can tell it, no, I want the diameter. Now that's also going to give me the distance across it. Or I could just dimension, pick those two lines, and now I have that diameter also. So either way works. Maybe I'll make that 5/8, and I can dimension how far it is between centers. I tell it 1, but this thing can still move around. And so if I want it to be offset, that's fine. I can just pull it over somewhere and then dimension it either from the center or from the side. Usually it's from the center. And maybe tell it from the center of that arc to that edge, I want that to be 1 inch also. So I could do all of that. If I wanted to line it up, though, I could just draw a line from the midpoint, just kind of trace it over until you get to the triangle and go there, and now I can tell that to be lined up. So now it's centered on the part, and so now I can dimension just how far I want it to be from that edge, and it's done. And so if I go ahead and finish and extrude this, tell it to go all the way through and flip the direction so it cuts. There it is. Now if I go back and I edit that first sketch, I change this width to be wider, that slot still stays in the middle of the part. Take it out. If I look at it, there's also an option for an overall slot. And that could be horizontal. Now you can see the line goes the entire length. So now I can tell it that I want the width to be 1/2, but I want that overall dimension to be 1. So now instead of changing the center to center distance, I'm changing the overall length. And depending on how you're drawing it, what you want, you might want to do that. It would center it up the same way as the other one. If I wanted a different, like a cutout on the corner or something, now I can just draw that in with the rectangle and then give it my dimensions. And then extrude it. Over there and cut out that piece to make whatever I want. And so it could be something like this. It could be, if I wanted to have a cutout that's a circular cutout, I could draw a circle here. Felt that I want it to be 1.5 inch diameter, and maybe I want the center to be 1/4 inch outside the part, and the center to be 1.5 inch from the edge. So I could do that. I could also, instead of putting this dimension, I could dimension, pick this line, and then right click and tell it tangent, and pick the bottom corner here. So now I know how much it's cutting into the part. And then I'd finish and then go to extrude. And because there's two kind of separate profiles, I can pick the one that I want to use. And again, tell it to cut it, and there we go. So I have that cutout that's there. if I'm on another piece of material like this, now if I want to go all the way through the edge, I'd do it. So if I want to do that, cut here and cut through, I'm going to create a sketch there. But remember, I'm not, this edge here where the side of the part is, that's not shaded because it's below the sketch plane. You can see it's curving down. So if I want that edge, in order to reference that, I need to project it. So I'm just going to pick on that. I'm going to press P for project instead of going through the menus this time, and just say OK. You can see it brings that projected edge up that I can work off of. So now let's say I want to have the circle centered on that edge. So I can do a circle, pick that there, and then I'll give it a dimension 1.5. I can tell it I wanted it to be 2 inches from the edge. So now I extrude that down. Oh, look, see, it's got kind of multiple sections, so I need to make sure I pick. If I just pick that, I'm going to get there. So I want to make sure that I pick that also, so it cuts all the way out. Another way to fix that is while I'm here, if I take this line and I just delete that line right there. So now you can see it's highlighting that whole area. So now when I go to extrude, I can just pick that and cut that out there. Okay. This can also be used if I have like a hole, if I want to line up a slot with a hole. So if I create a sketch here, got 2 little lines there. So if anytime you have a white dot, that means it's not fully constrained, so stuff can move. You always want to make sure we don't have any white dots left. Now I can put in a hole there on the top. Let's say I'm going to make this a clearance hole for 1/4, just a simple hole. Just going to have it go through there, but on the bottom I want to have a slot that's lined up with that. So I can create a sketch here on the bottom, and then again project that hole and say OK. And so I don't want it to use this hole as part of my thing that I'm going to make, the shape to make. So I'm going to pick on it and tell it to be construction. So over here I can tell it construction. See, it turns dashed, and now I can do a slot. And this time I'm going to do a center point slot. So I'm going to start it on that one, I'm going to bring it out to the side, and you can see it goes out each way. Now I can tell it that I want that to be a 1 inch long slot, 0.5 wide, and I can just extrude that down. I can say 2, just pick that bottom of that, so it's only going to go there. So now I've got that slot that's lined up perfectly with the hole. So I can do those kinds of things by just sketching the shape that I want to cut and cutting it out. So as I'm doing things, I want to start putting stuff together eventually. And so let's say I've got this piece of tubing, and I want to make another piece of tubing exactly like it. Remember, I can always just extrude, pick on the end of it, tell it to be a new component, and pull out another piece that's going to have the exact same shape as that one. So let's say I want to put these together. So I'm going to take this and I'm going to joint them from there. There. What I want to flip it. So let me create a joint origin real quick. I'm going to reorientate that so it's going that way. So now when I put this on, it's going to flip it up. So right now those are crossed over, and I don't want that to be. I want this one to be cut out to go around this piece of tubing there. So easy thing to do, I can just create a sketch on that end here, delete that inside shape, finish it, and then I'm going to turn this one off. So this one is this tube, I'm going to turn that off. Now I can just extrude and go like that. It's going to cut it off. Now when I turn this one back on, it's got a perfect cope right there with the cutout of that shape that went through it. You could also do that if I had this piece of tubing here and I want a piece of material that kind of goes around it. So let's say I'm going to have a piece of square tubing it's lined up with this, so I can create a sketch here, and I'm going to draw it here, and I want to make this edge and that point so coincident, or project that edge and make that corner on there, delete that edge, and I'm going to make those two equal to each other. And I'm going to tell it that I want it to line up 1.5 inches from that edge. So I want to extrude this out. So I want to make this aluminum tubing so it's going to be hollow. I'm going to tell it to be a new component so it doesn't join it. It's there. And so I've got that gap there. If I want to fill that gap, a couple of things I can do. One is I can move it inside and cut it off. So instead of doing it that way, I can make it this extrude, tell it I can go, instead of just one side, I can tell it two-sided. Now from this other side, I can just tell it to come to that corner. I just pick on that corner and it goes there. You can see it's offset in there. So I need to do the same thing I did before. So I'm going to go ahead and create a sketch here on the end of this rectangle tubing. Delete that inside edge so I just have that outer. Turn off the rectangle tube and then extrude that all so it cuts there. We want to turn off the other one because we want it to cut the things that are visible. If we have that other one turned on, so if I still have that rectangle tube turned on and I start that extrude, see it's going to cut out the tube, but I can also come back in down in here under objects to cut and tell it not to cut the tube and just uncheck that rectangle tube, and that way it doesn't cut it. So not to cut the rectangle tube there. I don't know why it didn't work that last time. And say OK. And it will cut just this piece and not that piece. So if I do turn it off, you can see that one's cut and has the cope on it. So it's fine there. Another thing that we'll want to do sometimes is we've got a piece of round tubing. And we want to cut this at a 45 so we can put it together and create a miter there. So when we draw round tubing, we always want to try and draw it centered on the origin so that we have planes going through the middle of it. It makes it a lot easier to work with. And so now I can just create a sketch. I'm going to pick this plane that's going right down the middle. And now I can just grab this edge here and project it. I can draw a line from the top corner over and back down the bottom corner. And I can just dimension from there to there and pick my angle. So if I want it to be a 90-degree corner, I can make that a 45. If I want to make it a 45-degree corner, I can make it a 22.5, and so on. So I'm going to extrude. Now I'm going to tell it to be symmetric. I'm going to bring it out and have it cut all the way through. And I can just say through all, whatever I want. So now if I copy this, and add a joint, you can see it changes that. So now it's a 90. If I go back in and I edit that angle to be the 22.5, now that's a 45. If I change it to be 22.5 plus 45, now it's 135 from the edge, or just an included angle of 35 or 45. So I can get kind of a lot of different shapes by making those cuts there. So, all right, hope that helped answer some questions.